I will now then try and do something along the lines of staying on track with my actual slides. But I am now comfortable that we're on track time-wise, so it will all at least stand a chance of running reasonably smoothly. This is going to be probably a silly question, but how many of you here kind of know Fund EcoMarket and the stuff that I do? Whew, good, thank you. That's good to hear. So basically, what my idea was when I was made redundant from Friends in 2008, I was still on the UCSIF board. We'd been running the retail subcommittee there, and it was just blindingly obvious that people didn't have a really good place to go to get all their information they needed to understand the different strategies and really what makes the funds that we're all here to talk about today different from other funds. There was a question earlier about, how do you engage with Indigenous people? Well, talk to fund managers that care about this stuff. This is not just a bunch of random data. This is real stuff that's happening in the world, and it's problems that we've got to address, and we will not solve problems just by selling purely off performance. In fact, we'll create problems, because obviously that will just shorten the timescales and make it all more desperate, and so that we've got to really start clamouring at the end. Actually, we need to get on top of these issues now. So the various filters I've got on Fund EcoMarket, the top left one then is very much about what are the issues, so the policies, issues and themes, the things that funds consider, if you like. The next bit then is approaches and applications, because all these funds don't look at things in the same way. And you've had, I think we may have someone from FCA here say, but certainly some standards people around, etc. People need to understand this stuff. These funds are genuinely diverse, and that is a good thing, because guess what? If they're all the same, we'd be chasing bubbles or creating bubbles left, right and centre. We do not want that. We want to have loads of different strategies that suit different client needs. So it's really important that, as well as understanding that, say, a fund looks at the environment or ethical issues and then dropping down into the subsections within that, that you also understand, well, are you looking at best of sector? Are you looking at cutting out certain things? Or are you looking at really focusing on those change agent solutions companies? And different funds and different strategies will, of course, suit different clients. They're at different stages in their journey. Like every one of us in here today, we're also in different stages in our journey as to how this market works. Then the last bit then is corporate activity. I didn't want to call it corporate responsibility. I kind of could have done, but it goes wider than that. So I've kind of given these all my titles. What the corporate activity filter does is it tells you what goes on behind the scenes in the companies. So you've got loads of people here. I mean, I see Eden Tree in the front that are fundamentally different from someone like BlackRock. I mean, they're just not the same kinds of companies. And it's important that you see how they differentiate themselves, and how all the fund managers that are here today have got firm strategies where they say, no, we're putting weight and thought and consideration towards trying to do what's right here. And I've just listed all of them. Now, none of the funds tick all the boxes. They just don't, partly because some of them are contradictory. You couldn't. So I just try and bring this information together. And then the next row, of course, comes down to what, well, frankly, any wealth manager, intermediary, financial advisor, whatever, who wants to understand the area, then has to do to work out, well, what's the product, what's the asset type, what's the geographic region, all the standard portfolio planning stuff. I don't look at the numbers. You guys have all got Financial Express feeds or whatever. You can look this stuff up. You've got it from elsewhere. So I focus on the stuff that you don't get from other people. And then the bottom box is my SRI stars classifications. It links through to the fact-find questionnaire on Fund EcoMarket, where I just help people to cut through and just see these as groups of funds that have got broadly similar strategies. Some focus on sustainability, some on ethics, some on the environment, some just on social issues. And actually, some of those aren't necessarily very good at all the other ones, whereas some I could easily have classified in 5 of them, my groups. But just for simplicity, I've given each fund one classification. So to give you an overview of how that's going, obviously this was a really slow start. I was not prepared to take out loans, remortgage the house or anything to get this up and running. It's been a slow grind. I've seen Jeff from Rain Spencer who's been with me on this journey over the many years. But now we've got to the fact we've got about 500 funds on there. Only the main OIC funds and CCAVs, the primary funds, have got the full information on them. We've got around about 1,000 users per month. And it's all free and open to use. I want people understanding this stuff. There's journalists in the room here today as well. It's there for you to use too. It's there for pressure groups, members of the public, whoever wants to use it. My main audience, the people I see is getting really stuck in this area, are intermediaries who've just not had access to this information, because fund managers can't answer the phone to everyone. So it's really for you, but it's open to absolutely everybody. So on top of the fund EcoMarket work, obviously what I do in addition to that is things like consultancy. So there are some companies I work for, and various things come and go. But my main focus is the fund EcoMarket work. But on top of that, also things like the general, I called it drum banging, that's a technical term. I will respond to consultations. I will go along with, so Simon and I and some other people here today met with the FCA a couple of weeks ago, just to try and help people to understand this market and to recognise what it can really bring, how, this stuff's the future. This is how investment's going to have to be. And the funds that really have got their heads around it are in a very good place, providing they can get their message out. So that's what this site's all about. I also put out plenty of information on what the people click on the site. So we've had something like, I think it was 8,000 users so far this year on the site, and 21,000 clicks. And I think probably a smaller number of those people are clicking lots and doing different things. I see from the back end, some people use it really a lot. Other people just dip in and out occasionally. But I put out the information on what people are doing. So if you're an advisor, look at the stuff and say, oh, actually, people have been, they've been really looking at sustainability stuff lately. They've been looking at coal, oil and gas exclusion. And a lot of you may be surprised. A lot of people have thought things like environmental issues would completely be the only things people would look at. Not so. Anti-tobacco, concerns about arms trade still, that stuff's still going. Animal testing, animal welfare stuff. It's actually pretty high up the clicks still, I guess partly because people know that I'll cover that stuff. But also, there are still lots and lots of people out there who care about this stuff, and rightly so. But I don't expect, my opinion on this stuff to be exactly the same as any of yours, and certainly not exactly the same as everyone else out there. We've all got different views, and that's fine. But that's why there's so many different options on the tool. Just to make the point about the number of options, these are just small screenshots of the top sections, but just to give you an idea, you've got hover over text on each of the options there as well, so it explains it. And these things are all downloadable. There's a Word document that's in the download section of the site, which has got all the buttons on here just dumped into a Word document, so you can use it to create your own fact-find questionnaire. What I'm trying to do with all of this is oil the cogs. I know I can't change everything on my own, but I can get the information out there for you guys to do it. And having worked inside these funds for a really long time, I know what these funds can do if we can get them to scale, if we can get them to really work. And again, these are the people who've been with me on this journey. My sponsors, who frankly, for obvious reasons, I couldn't do this without. So coming back a little bit to Simon's comments, this is a changing market. A lot's happening at the moment. As some of you will know, receiving emails from me at strange times on a Sunday or 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock at night will know it's been pretty mad. This area is growing, yeah? I think that's, you're all here today because you recognise that things are shifting. But we've had, obviously, the Paris Climate Accord. We've got the green finance strategy that the government's announced. We've got the government saying they're going net zero by 2050. Goodness knows we need to do it before then. But at least they've put it in writing. EU sustainability taxonomies have been published. A bit of a monster, but it shows that the EU's behind it and trying to wake people up and bring some kind of order to help people understand things. FCA, the ESMA, so it's looking likely once, and I think Simon touched on this, once this works out, at some point it is quite likely to be obligatory for IFAs to consider this stuff, which means that you're going to have systems in place behind the scenes to check and do compliance and make sure that everyone is in a position to give sound advice to match clients' aims and opinions as well as their financial needs through to the products that they're eventually buying. So that is going to be a massive change. We do not know when it's coming in, though. It's one of those things that, yes, it'll happen, but like so many other things, it's being held up by, well, what on earth is happening in this country and with Brexit, et cetera, et cetera. But it seems that there is no... The FCA is comfortable doing it. It's just a question of, well, can it happen for whatever reasons? They certainly weren't giving us the impression that they thought this was something they had to fight against. So the signs are good. And then, of course, we've had information about plant species, the whole biodiversity thing linking through to Grace's work. We can't keep losing species. A million species currently under threat. It's just awful. That's just insane. So, with all of this in mind, here we have my latest brainstorm. Am I the only one here, or can I have a show of hands? Who's with me on the I am deeply embarrassed that we have got children calling out our industry? Yes. Yeah? It's shocking. I've got, you'll have met George possibly, I've got children kind of the same age as Greta Thunberg, and this ain't right. The way we have trashed the planet in recent years, it's just been accelerating. Now, that cannot carry on, and the financial services industry has kind of stepped back, and the level of greenwash and nonsense and people with big budgets who can just throw a load of money at something and say, there you go, aren't we wonderful because we sponsored something. No, they've got to fundamentally shift what they do. So I don't know quite how this is going to end up, but I've had a lot of time, I've been thinking about this stuff, kind of hoping someone else would do it. And then it was kind of about, I suppose it was probably around about last January when I first wrote my first paper on this to myself, really. And I thought, no one's going to do it. Someone's got to, so I guess that probably means me. There's loads of really good initiatives, and I do not want to compete with anyone on this. But I'm just figuring if we can say, we have all got to shift the dial. We've got to go from brown, dirty, polluting, trashing the planet industries across to clean, green industries where we can actually sustain life, human civilization, if we can call it that, into way into the future. I think someone talked about 7 generations forwards and some press releases on this recently. So what I want to do is to use the information that's on Fund EcoMarket and work out those things that we think are the absolutely core nuts and bolts of what we must do. And I've got a draft of this, obviously I've done it several times, but just those things that we absolutely can agree on, that we say, we can't keep doing that. Okay, so we've got to, for example, avoid coal, oil and gas majors, unless, of course, we're engaging with those companies. There are companies like Saracen here, but there's others as well, who do loads of engagement work, and that's fantastic. We're trying to influence companies to encourage them to be better, because Shell and BP, etc., aren't going to go away. And likewise, Rathbones have done loads of stuff on the Climate Action 100 group. So if a fund manager's behind those guys, then that's your free ticket. So go ahead, invest in them, of course. We need you in that AGM. We need you having words, saying, calling them out, basically. So this is my way of just trying to pull it together. It's not going to be perfect, okay? There's going to be things that we'll all say, I wish we could do such and such, but it can grow over time. So this is my latest obsession, if you like, just to say, well, how do we shift the dial? Let's just get that focus right on it. How do we change things? So let's make it so that we don't all have to cower when we see people like Greta Thunberg talking at the UN conference and us all thinking, oh my God, I'm part of the problem. I'm in an industry that's really messed up here. So broadly speaking, can I ask if that sounds like a reasonable idea to... Sorry, this goes through from intermediaries. I'm missing a bit here. Intermediaries, so I'm working with PIMFA. Have I got PIMFA here yet today? Cool, brilliant. So PIMFA, Industry Association for IFAs, they'll be working on this with me. We're going to work out training, we're going to work out verification, we're going to have it so that IFAs are trained on this, got access to information that will just get them started. And of course, we've got everything we need on Fund EcoMarket in terms of fund information. And then the fund verification side, I'll be working with Sarah, Minerva, who will be helping do verification stuff. There are other groups as well who I really want to chip in. We'll work it out kind of as we go along. So who have I missed? Julie McDowell, who used to run the ethical side at Standard. Also, Julie and I have been knocking emails back and forth probably for a couple of years on this. How do we get the criteria to make sense? So we're working on this, but I want this to go live Q1. I think we've got to move fast, and I think we've got to get to a stage where we say, let's stop arguing about the detail and just focus on the stuff that really matters, and let's make it so that we can say something quite interesting by the time we get around to COP26 next November. So with that in mind, you've each got little postcards on your chairs. What I would like, please, is your thoughts. So if you could, send me a postcard. There's trays out the front. It's also online on Fund EcoMarket now. It's in my notes at the top, and there's also it's on the About Us bit. Just get the information to me as to how you think this ought to work. Organising this event has been a major task. Now when this is behind me, I'll have more time to read your postcards, pick up the information, we go forwards with this. So broadly speaking, who thinks that sounds half reasonable? Yeah, thank you. Okay, good. Because honestly, if this isn't going to work, I've got other stuff I could be doing, obviously. I've got quite a lot I could be doing. So do please tell me. But I need pragmatism as well with this. But we've got to have the intention of really shifting that dial and being really loud and pushing back against those people who've got far bigger budgets than any of the fund managers here today. But collectively, I think we can do it. I think it's possible. And we're going to give it a go. And we're going to see how far we get by next November, COP26.